But then, so Makaya designed the first dreadnought, and a friend of mine is working on a project now. Martin has created two of the original Makaya designs. They're very much like this, but no, Martin had never made a big guitar before this Hawaiian musician who was touring in the United States after being like, you know, blackballed by the U.S. government for not signing the loyalty oath to be in the new U.S. version of the Royal Hawaiian Orchestra. And Queen Liliuokalani was still alive. And so Makaya came over, lived in Portland, Oregon, and toured all over the United States, singing the Hawaiian music of the 20s and the 30s, because it was early on. And on a side note, so the whole idea of a D28 is based on Hawaiian music. So there's all this resonance, which became the hallmark of bluegrass music, and there's still a great challenge for bluegrass players to make use of what these instruments can offer. For instance, the resonance of this guitar is often lost in the great mix of bluegrass instrumentation, and it's because bluegrass is now something you play as a kind of a style rather than as music. I mean, Bill Monroe didn't look at it like he was playing bluegrass music. He never thought he was playing anything but music, and that's why his music is so varied and lively. And in Flatt and Scruggs, they still, as the early graduates of the Bill Monroe School of Bluegrass, approach things in a very creative manner. In fact, if you remember, some of the great classic banjo tunes have snare drum on them. Lester's playing guitar, and they recorded. At the time, I was like, yeah, that's kind of cute and all that. I was much more into Bill Monroe's sort of compressed, everything happening style. But now you look back at it, it was like Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs played with a great deal of spaciousness, and the snare drum is just in there as a kind of a toe tapper, kind of give you, because there's no mandolin shot. And when I was with Bill Monroe, Richard Green and I went over one morning. We dressed up in our Bluegrass Boy suits, of course, and our hats. And we went over to WSM radio station early in the morning to go to the Flatt and Scruggs early morning the Hot Rise sponsored biscuit hour, 5:30 in the morning, and I in the 80s I approached WSM through a representative and asked if I could start a radio show like that. They said, look, the word came back through my representation. They said, look, it's a great idea, but we're no longer interested in selling flour to farmers at 5:30 in the morning. We want to sell blue jeans and sneakers to teenagers. So things had changed, but that's part of the romance of the old bluegrass. And I learned so much watching Flatt and Scruggs up close. That's the only time I ever saw one of their shows. I saw them on the Opry, but the Opry you see them from backstage and from the side. You can't really appreciate it. What they did in that radio show was Earl, they only had one microphone, and Earl would stand to the left of the microphone, and when he came in to sing, he would sling his banjo like this and sing here, and then the tenor singer Jake, the bass player, would lean in from here, and Lester would be here, and he was a strong singer. He didn't have to come in too close. But what impressed me about Earl was, and I think this is a great thing for banjo players to be aware of, is that when the singing started, Earl didn't roll at all. I mean, he was so conscious of being part of the rhythm of the band. And when he sang, he would only chop, play the backbeat, and then go into a roll at the end of the phrase. And oftentimes the role would be him, stepping much further back than I am, and then playing the role as he stepped back into the band. So it wasn't like everything being front and center at all times. And there was a lot of air in the sound. And I think bluegrass could, it doesn't matter, of course, because everybody just wants to work. I saw a picture of the String Dusters who played out in Colorado, where I was just out there doing shows. They were on one of those shows, and I saw these pictures, and I hardly recognize those guys. They're all remote now. They've all got like in-ears monitors, and they're all remote, and they can walk around stage and never be near a microphone. And which is good too, because they're listening. They have to listen because they can't just be playing all the time. And so, as they're incorporating, what I consider sort of the true bluegrass dynamics, they're also adding a lot of rock and roll in terms of body language. And I saw a picture of them, the guitar player and the banjo player, soloing at the front of the stage, facing each other. No mics, not a single mic in sight, because they're all direct. That direct now means not only direct, plugged in direct to a direct box, but a remote. You carry a little battery pack on your belt, and it's a transmitter, and it's like John Hartford was the first guy to use these things. And the way John had it was he had a transmitter backstage with two antennas, like rabbit ears. And that's where the signal would come, and then it would go to the sound system. You don't even need that nowadays. All you need is, well, you gotta have something in the guitar to pick up the sound. And you wear a little pack on your belt. I think it's 2 packs. One is the power. You have to have a lot of power to make this work. So you have that on your belt, and you also have a little tiny amp. And you just take up the volume in your ears, and there's no wires. You don't see any wires at all. You get the in-ear monitor on one little channel, and you go, okay, that's enough. I think I'll turn the banjo down. No, but you know what I'm saying, and you can get yourself, and suddenly everybody's relaxing. There's not this tension of not being able to get a good sound and not being able to hear yourself. So I think there's hope in that direction, especially the freedom to walk around stage. How cool is that? Because really, bluegrass began with that. It's just people walking around in front of a microphone, And I'm about to go into the studio, and I'm going through these visualizing dreams now of like, okay, if that lick is an important lick, we got to step out of the way so that this guy can move forward and play that lick. I want to. One of my goals on this one is to have signature musical, you could say themes or licks, but when somebody wants to play that song, they know that that's the hook. They got to play that hook. Somebody's got to play it. Maybe it's only a banjo phrase or something like that, or maybe it's a fiddle thing that everyone will go like Julian Pinelli's going to play fiddle. Maybe everyone will go in the future like, God, you got to play Julian's lick, man. It's just like just a thing, any kind of little thing that can be an identifiable phrase in a song. And I think that's important too, because a lot of bluegrass now is just play, play, play. And the other thing I would say is listening to young bands, just play the melody. That's always been the deal. Just play the melody. You got a mandolin solo? Learn the melody. Learn to play it. It's always going to be good if you can play the melody. And the rest of the time is this whole idea of improvisation is, that's, people learn to improvise before they learn to play the melody now. It's kind of like in art, people learning to geometrically compose before they can learn to draw a hand or a figure or something. I don't know what the end result of that is really, except to my ear. Maybe it's because I'm getting old, but I love to hear the melody. I love to hear it. You know, there's been so much emphasis in bluegrass on the instrumentality of like pick. Wait a minute. You know, bluegrass began with songs. You know, listen to the early Stanley Brothers, and you'll hear these two brothers, and they're both playing with two fingers. You know, Ralph was, you know, playing, and Carter was playing. That was it. There was no more than that, you know, and that was enough. And it was songs, you know, it was like, and I would say to guitar players now, I mean singers, no, I'll say singers who play guitar. You know, there's only so much you can, there's two things that happened. Bill Monroe had a fiddle player named Chubby Wise, and Chubby played, you know, stuff that Earl picked up to play on the gospel tunes. The Bluegrass Quartet with Chubby Wise in the band, Chubby played guitar, everybody else but Bill just sang. And Bill would play the turnarounds, you know, the little phrases in between verses. Chubby Wise, the fiddle player, the great Chubby Wise, the essential bluegrass fiddle player, played guitar on all that gospel stuff. So there's the lesson. And he was the first guy to play with a flat pick. And the reason was that the fiddle players could play pizzicato, you know, pluck the strings. And Chubby got to the point, and a lot of players did this, where he would just use a little pick. He'd pizzicato a melody using a little flat pick. Well, Vassar Clemens told me that when he was starting to be apprenticed to Chubby to be the new fiddler in the Bluegrass Boys in the 50s, Chubby was going to move on. He ended up with Hank Snow while I was there, so I knew Chubby. While I was at the opera, he was with Hank Snow. But young Vassar was 14 years old, and he said that he just remembers Chubby teaching Jimmy Martin, the new guitarist who come in replaced Mac Wiseman. Jimmy Martin, he really started to articulate that run. Before that, it was, which is based on something called the guitar boogie, you know. You know, that's how this that style, the early picking style for bluegrass rhythm guitar. So here's Chubby Wise, at Bill's insistence, Vassar watching, Chubby Wise teaching Jimmy Martin to play with a flat pick. I mean, it came from Chubby Wise. You know, you don't think about that, right? Because even great great players like Ed Mayfield, who came along from Texas and played with Bill and did the gospel album, and many did the first whippoorwill, in fact. He was playing with a thumb pick. But at Bill's choice, the flat pick was the articulation that he wanted. And I've gone back to using some of Carter Stanley's early style because, truthfully, you can play faster. I mean, you can play, but you can also play. And then when you get a banjo playing that fast, you get some sound. I'm going to tell you, I sat down with what's his name? His name is Thorne, too. I've been playing with two men named Thorne.
Andy Thorne.
Andy, the banjo player, right?
Yeah, from Leftover Salmon.
From Leftover Salmon. Now, we sat down at one of these winter deals a couple of years ago, and I was just getting back into playing this early style. You know? I said, just play with me on this, you know. I'm like, I'm going down the road feeling bad. I'm going down the road feeling bad. Going down the road feeling bad, Lord, Lord. I ain't gonna be treated this way. And if I had to do that in a flat pick, you know, it'd be like, you could fake it, you know. Or, you know. But you gets a little frantic and you start to use muscles that you need to be using for singing to play the guitar. And so I said, so we cabled way up, like into B, you know. I said, so what does the banjo sound like if we do this up here? I'm going down a rough and back. I want to tell you, the banjo sounded like outer space. It was, the banjo has a ring to it, but it can't happen until the notes are happening so fast that the ring is not just the purity of like playing the open position, like J.D. Crowe style. A lot of people now, and Sonny Osborne, they play the open position, which is in the same realm as the guitar. They've forgotten all this beautiful rhythm stuff up the neck that Earl Scruggs was doing all the time. And when you get the banjo going that fast, I don't know, there's something about the cycle of harmonics that there you start to hear this other sound. Now I know I sound like I'm a bluegrass mystic, but Carlton Haney used to talk about that. And Carlton Haney did the first bluegrass festival, and here's Carlton telling me what we're going to do, and I'm the new guy in the Bluegrass Boys, and he says, Pete, Bill will listen to you. You've got to tell him that we're going to put speakers in the ground and up in the trees, and people will really hear what there is in bluegrass. And I'm like, yeah, Pete, you know what I mean. You know what's in there. And I'm like, yeah, I've gotten drunk with the Little Brothers. I know what's in there. But Carlton was, there's a famous thing, little clip with him on YouTube somewhere of him talking the Pythagorean theorem with Jimmy Martin. And it's like, it's you know, it's bluegrass craziness, but it's beautiful. Like Pythagorean, you know, it's a circle of fifths going to go around like that until, and then he used to, so he was into the sound of bluegrass, and he told me this one story. He said, now Don Reno, you know, he didn't like the bridge he was working on. He was carving on it. He said, he asked Earl Scruggs for a bridge, and Earl said, sure, and he gave him a banjo bridge, and he put it on his banjo. And Pete, I'm a-telling you, when they started picking, that circle of harmonic fifths, the Pythagorean theorem was working, and the bridge exploded. That was his story. And I think it was true. So, you know, there is a mystical quality in the harmonic structure that is created by the bluegrass combination of instruments. But it means that people have to find where the complementary, not just a harmonically, you know, not just harmony, it's just something else. It's I don't know what you'd call it. Maybe somebody knows better than I. You know, it's what Bill Monroe called the ancient tones. He said, when the music is right and you love it, the people will love it. And that's it. You've got to love it. But in order to love it, you've got to get past the concepts of I'm doing this because mandolin players do that, or I'm doing that because guitar players do that. And you have to start listening. So that's my little workshop there. We've got to really listen, you know, and that's the joy too, you know. As Bill said, listen good, Pete, and don't you ever forget it. He said, there's enough flowers out on that limb already. I'm the flower of the limb.
Flower on the limb.
I guess it's time to start the show.
Yeah, but aren't we loving this?
Bravo!
Listen, it's my favorite thing to be able to hang out with you all, and you know, we could talk about all this forever.
Yeah.
And ever, amen.
Wow.
So let us do that. And, but I think it's time to move on, right?
I think it might be.
Thank you, everybody. I've really enjoyed so much coming down here and just being able to be here with you all. Thank you.